Hey everyone, and welcome to How to Clean a Betta Tank. Going over some of my supplies. I use this little net right here to help me capture Frank, my fish, and that'll help move him into this little cup where he'll wait while we clean the tank. He's got his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle and a fresh plant, and the water jug that I'll use to measure and treat the water before I put it in the tank. There's Frank's nice tank right now. And then I use AquaSafe and a pH test kit to make sure that the water stays safe. First I'll just start by pulling out the filter, making sure all the water comes out of the little oxygen stone at first. We'll eventually wipe that down and clean it all up as well. Now it's time to get Frank out of the tank. I start by just using this little scoop to get the water out. I don't want to submerge that whole cup in there and risk hurting Frank, and I also don't want to pour the water into the cup on a table because I could risk spilling it everywhere and I risk spilling Frank out. So I just transfer a little more water into his temporary home, and then it's time to grab our little net. The little net Frank is not such a big fan of. He likes to kind of run and hide in his plants, which is understandable, but we'll eventually be able to get him and then kindly transfer him into his temporary home. I think he'll be happy with the results. I went ahead and poured the water out. I had to do this part outside, and I didn't get to film it since I'm a one-man camera crew. I typically recommend leaving in more water than this, especially enough to fill your gravel, but I wanted to do a whole water change with the new plants. It was about time for me to do it anyway, and it was about time for me to also change out these plants. They'd been there for a little bit, and betta fish like bigger leaves so they can rest. They need a place to nap and a place to hang out when they're not swimming around. Before you put the new plants in, you'll want to clean them off a little bit. This is the same treatment that I use for the water that'll go in the tank. Put a little bit in some fresh water, and then just go ahead and rinse and soak the new stuff. You want to try to wash off any dirt or materials that got on there from production or shipping, and make sure it's as acclimated as possible when it goes in the tank. Any kind of pH balance can really throw it off. After you soak those, dip a paper towel in that same water, and we'll actually use this paper towel to clean the tank. We're just going to wipe it out. I know vinegar is something that's recommended, but I like just using the treated water, so we just get enough off that it kind of cleans the glass but still leaves some of the good bacteria and healthy stuff in there for the fish. You shouldn't always do a full water change with this one because I'm adding new plants. I want to make sure I clean each crevice out and get it as good as possible. You'll see some of the algae and stuff that comes off right here. We'll do the same thing to wipe the filter off too. I'm just going to wipe the tube down and just get that a little cleaned up. The oxygen stone where the air actually comes through seems pretty clean, so we'll go ahead and keep that the way it is. You want to avoid using any kind of cleaners or any kind of soap or any kind of chemicals really that could get into the fish's water. You want to keep it as natural as you can. Fish, especially betta fish, like to keep their environment pretty similar as far as chemicals and bacteria that are in there, so a full water change and any kind of chemical could really mess up your tank and eventually kill your fish. And that would be sad because we love Frank. Now we start placing the new plants in there. They've been soaked and rinsed in the treated water, so they're safe to start arranging. I want to just get him in there in a way that gives him some free space and then gives him a nice little area to hang out in. And of course he's got his new buddy to come with him too. Arrangement is entirely up to you. I would definitely recommend looking up what stuff your fish like. Betta, they like to rest, and at first he was laying at the bottom of the tank, and I thought that was bad, but quickly realized he just wanted a leaf to hang out on. Now we can go ahead and start filling up our water. I use this 1 gallon jug just because it helps me measure out the treatment a little bit better. I do use tap water, which is recommended safe for betta, but I use this formula right here, which is just called AquaSafe for betta. It'll help keep the water at the right pH and make sure that when I put Frank in, he's not going to be shocked by a whole new chemical environment. Following that, I'll just start pouring the water in. I try to do a little bit of a gentle pour just to make sure I don't mess up any of the leaves. On some of these fake plants, I've had leaves break off from pouring the water in or just jumbling them around. So I want to make sure that this place stays nice and fresh before we even get Frank in there. I'll add the second gallon in now, treat it just the same. I like to let the water sit a little bit after I add the treatment in, just to make sure that everything goes as planned and I don't just add it in too quickly. Now that we've got the water in, I'm going to go ahead and test the pH. We did use tap water, which is totally safe for betas, but we want to make sure everything's right before we put Frank in there. The ideal pH for betas is between 6.8 and 7.5, so just go ahead and grab my 5 milliliters of water, and then I'm going to put in my 3 drops of pH test solution. We're looking for something blue or a little blue-green. I think the color of this looks a little different through the video just against the blue towel, but the pH does come out perfect after we check it up against the light and make sure that it looks all nice and right. Once the pH looks good, we'll go ahead and just do a temperature test in the water. I usually just do a finger test, making sure that both feel about the same temperature. You don't want it to be too cold because you could just throw your fish into shock, but betas do like their water a little bit warmer. Looking at our pH, we know that it's time to finally put Frank back in his home. I know he has been waiting to get out of this cup, and plop, there he goes. A little bit of water from the old tank right there into the fresh one. Time to explore. Now that Frank is back in his crib, we can move it back to the rightful spot over on the shelf. Really appreciate you guys watching. Frank and I appreciate the views like always. Can't wait to watch your alls. Bye.